Welcome to TCB's Secrets of Success Small Business Webinar. I'm Allison Kaplan. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Twin Cities Business. Thank you for joining us over the lunch hour to recognize the resilience and creativity of a few local businesses. We chose them because their stories are compelling, their leadership is wise, and they represent just how personal business can be and how challenging this past year has been for small businesses that don't have deep reserves to dip into when a crisis arises. I think a lot of us can relate to that. For those of you joining us today, feel free to use the comment section on your screen to ask panelists questions during the webinar and to network with one another. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to briefly thank and introduce you to our sponsor, Bremer Bank. Since 1943, Bremer Bank has helped farmers, businesses, and individuals in Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin grow and prosper and build relationships, strengthening communities, and providing a comprehensive range of banking, mortgage, investment, wealth management, trust, and insurance products and services. With us today from Bremer Bank, we have their business solutions market leader, Jared Hutchinson. With more than 15 years in the financial sector, Jared has spent the last 5 years partnering with small to medium businesses. Currently, Jared serves the Twin Cities region's managing business bankers who specialize in small business relationship management. His team's primary initiative is to start a dialogue with leaders in a variety of industries and partners to provide meaningful solutions that add value to their enterprise. Jared, take it away.
Thank you, Allie, and hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for participating in today's event, which focuses on the important topic of small businesses. Again, my name is Jared Hutchinson. I'm the Business Solutions Market Leader at Bremer Bank, and Bremer is honored to sponsor this event. Today's discussion is incredibly important and timely, as many small businesses are mapping out their approach to 2021 and beyond. We all know the past year has been one of the most unpredictable years in recent memory, and the challenges have impacted all of us. Bremer was founded on the belief that the banks should help businesses in good times and bad, and that will help communities thrive. It's this commitment to cultivating thriving communities that's the core of our being as a bank. And we know that small businesses are a huge part of each thriving community. Over the last year, we've doubled down on our commitment to local businesses in these challenging times, including throwing our full weight into the Paycheck protection program, supporting as many businesses and employees as possible. We've strengthened our ability to use new tools and resources to help our local business customers. We're taking what we learned this past year and approaching 2021 with a focus on learning and listening. That's why it's so important and why I'm looking forward to today's conversations and hearing from all of you about your opportunities and the challenges that you're foreseeing in the year ahead. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, Jared. We're going to talk to Jared again later in the program to get some of his advice for small businesses. Now our panelists, they represent a variety of industries: food service, marketing and events, consumer products. They're all members of our community, both personally and professionally. And they've all stretched in ways they probably wouldn't have thought possible just a year ago. You can read more about them and several other small businesses in our February-March issue, which is now on newsstands, should be arriving in your mailboxes. It's also online where you can page through the whole e-edition and find the small business story right on the homepage. But today, we're going to hear from them directly about some of the key moves that help them adapt and even thrive during a most challenging year. So let's have our panelists join me now. Hi, everybody. So glad you're here. Let me just go around and tell everybody who you are. We'll start with Megan Diamond, the president and founder of NParallel. Megan's leadership has fostered growth from a small Minnesota organization to a company with more than 75 national and local clients. Under Megan's leadership, NParallel has received inspiring accolades such as Best Places to Work, Manufacturing Excellence, and Exhibitor Magazine's Top 40. Thanks for being here, Megan.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we have Kyle Gallus. Kyle is the CEO and co-founder of Finley's. Kyle, along with his wife, Angie, saw an opportunity to serve a greater purpose through our pets. A lot of new pets in our families these days, that's for sure, myself included. Together, Kyle and Angie created Finley's, a premium dog treat brand named after their resilient rescue pup and CTO, that's Chief Treat Officer Finley. Their company focuses on giving voice, opportunities, and confidence to people with disabilities through employment and giving initiatives. Next, we have Mariam Mohammed, co-founder of Hoyo, maker of Somali foods. Mariam has more than 30 years of professional experience working with nonprofits, foundations, public and private organizations, including international institutions. For the past 18 years, Mariam has worked as an independent consultant with expertise in program startups and turnarounds, assessments, plan implementation, strategic planning, development systems, implementations. Thanks for being here, Mariam. And she's joined by her co-founder and CEO, Matt Glover of Hoyo. Matt has spent the last 10 years focused on creative solutions to economic and social empowerment of refugees in the US. He's led Hoyo through the entrepreneurial phase. He also provides consulting to immigrant-led startups on food safety, program development, sales, and customer service. I am so glad to have all of you here with me today. Let's dive in. So Megan, I'm going to start with you. Your business is experiential. That's literally what you do. And suddenly events were shut down almost a year ago now, hard to believe. Did you realize right away you were going to have to do more than just wait this out? And what were some of the key steps you took to make that successful shift into PPE?
Sure. Thanks, Allison. And thank you all for the opportunity to be here today. So for us, we are in the business of human connection, face-to-face events. And our biggest quarter is generally first quarter. So on March 5th, which was at the very beginning of what was happening, one of our biggest shows that 7 of our clients go to was actually canceled. We had trucks en route. We were in the middle of setup. And for us, that started the downward spiral, if you will. So we immediately moved to making a 3-tiered plan. And that included kind of an if this, then this, which none of it was good news. But within 10 days, unfortunately, we were at tier 3. And so we were making some really, really hard decisions. So it came really fast and hard, you know, in our business and in our industry in general. So we gathered the troops and we all met and we had a conversation, all of us actually, and said, we're going to be bold, we're going to be brave, and we're going to make decisions based on what is best for the people here that depend on in parallel. And also as things were escalating in the greater community, we're going to do something to help and to make a difference. Asked everyone to become a leader, submit your ideas, and literally everyone submitted many ideas about what we could do with our experience, our expertise, and our equipment, and how we could keep moving forward. So that is how PPE came to be, and it was ironic. Face-to-face communications, and now we're moving into the space of building what we called barriers built to unite. So we wanted to get into the community and help people get back together and safely, you know, at the grocery stores and banks and that sort of thing, all across the board. So let me see here, what was I? So our move to PPE really happened very, very quickly. When that became our focus, within 24 hours, we bought all the acrylic we could find and we launched an e-commerce site and we got on social media marketing and we just moved forward.
And if there's anybody left who doesn't know what PPE is, we should just tell them it's personal protective equipment. You started making the shields that we now see at every checkout counter, in every store, in offices, and you had the foresight to realize that this was going to be in high demand and jumped right into production.
We did. One of our big markets is actually education. And so really important providing products that can get the kids back safely. We've also done a lot with nonprofit and shelters and in nursing homes and that sort of thing. So, so that's how we pivoted.
Yeah, it's amazing. What a change. I mean, I imagine you couldn't have even thought about that, manufacturing this type of equipment just months before it happened.
Right.
So Kyle, I know that the early days of the pandemic were pretty scary for you too. You were on the verge of a major product launch. Finley's dog treats were going to be launching throughout the Pacific Northwest. And of course, the Pacific Northwest, as we all know, was the first region hit hard by COVID-19, and you got canceled. But new opportunities arose right away, or how did it come about?
Well, it's interesting. And just thank you for the opportunity to kind of share this story and get this out to the community, because what's really cool about it is we all know what happened in the Pacific Northwest. And as a brand, as a company, we built this company literally from hand cutting dog treats and being a completely customer facing company at your local breweries and your local markets, selling treats, talking to our customers. Our ambassador program with people with disabilities, creating jobs through store demos, all of these things that rely on in-person interaction to really build the brand. And it was interesting because we were not only getting ready to launch, but we had just finished a rebrand. We also had a new trainer bite, a new product line, which ultimately we didn't know COVID was coming. We just thought there was some opportunity in trainer bites, and little did we know all of these different blessings in disguise, came to us with this pullback. When we were getting ready to launch in the Pacific Northwest with their pet specialty stores, they were hardest hit. They closed down and really didn't have the infrastructure. There was no e-com business that they had in place. And we as a company had to look at, okay, well, what can we do? What is the opportunity? I think we looked at, do we launch in another region? Well, every 15 to 30 days, new regions were shutting down to the point where by April, the whole country just had pulled back. So for us, when we sat down together, we said, what can we do? Who can we reach out to? What are those big asks that we have to ask, the retail partners we're chasing? And we got lucky. We got an immediate yes from Chewy.com, which anybody that's familiar with what's going on with their rapid growth, we were able to get up and going pretty quickly with them. And what was interesting is Chewy ordered product for, 6 weeks. They said, this is what we think will be the right runway. 48 hours later, completely sold out on Chewy.com of all SKUs. And that was when we really realized, okay, we have something to lean into, to be strong with, but also how are we going to leverage our mission? Our people with disabilities, that is who we want to serve. And shortly after the Chewy thing happened, Target, we got a meeting with them and they said to us, how quickly can we get you up online? We want to get behind this brand. We want to help. So those two key dominoes really helped us sleep at night, knowing, okay, we built a ton of inventory. What are we going to do with it? And where are we going to sell it? But also, who's going to help us represent the mission and really serve out the mission? So we're really fortunate with that. It's still to this day really interesting. You think about what's happening in Dallas, Texas, another region we're going to get ready to launch into in 2 weeks. And, Mother Nature has another story for us, and that's okay. It's just one of those things we can always know there is that online e-commerce business that is out there, but also leveraging those partners to help represent our mission.
Right. One quick follow-up, Kyle. I thought it was so interesting that you had actually been talking to Target for a couple of years, and they didn't think you were quite ready, not
Right.
ready for the shelf.
Yep.
Along comes a pandemic. Suddenly they were able to get you online in a matter of days or weeks, and now you're going to be launching in stores as well.
Correct. And I think what's cool with that is that conversation stemmed around the mission first, even before the product. Really understanding how everybody can be better in the inclusive community and what they want to do with their initiatives at their corporations or small businesses. And they really leaned on us to learn more about the brand. And eventually, after a couple conversations, I think they saw, okay, we had some learnings to do, absolutely. And 2020 certainly gave us those learnings that we needed. And after the proof of concept online, it really helped that make that decision to move in store that much easier. It's just one of those things where patience, persistence, and staying true to who you are really pays off.
Right. You can't think you gotta, if it takes another time of asking, you gotta be persistent. That's for sure. Matt and Miriam, let's talk a little bit about Hoyo. I know that you too faced some early concerns where sampling in grocery stores is so important to your business and to getting the product out there. How did you quickly pivot, and what were some of the key steps for Hoyo? Matt, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. We decided I would share a little bit on this one. Yeah. So demoing our product in stores is kind of vital to our business. We have a product that not a lot of people have heard about, and frankly has a high entry price for people because they're handmade, and we pay really well. So our prices are up a little bit. And so when we in-store demo, we'll typically sell, 60 bags of sambusa because people love them so much. They're just incredible.
Matt, can we have you pause right there? And Miriam, can you just kind of I wish we were handing out samples to everyone. I wish we could figure out how to do that through Zoom, but could you just kind of give us a little sense of what a sambusa is for those who haven't tried one yet?
Yeah, so sambusas are, I wish I have a picture of them here, but they're a little triangle thing, and they look okay when you look at them, but it takes a lot of time to make them. So, and it's a traditional food in our culture, and it's not something in Somalia we eat all the time. We eat them only during fasting. And the reason behind it, it really has a lot of nutrition in it. So you have the carbohydrate and you have the protein. And when you are fasting the whole day, you want to eat all these things at one time. So that's the idea behind sambusa. And of course, during weddings and special guests is one we provide. And the way they are, in Somalia, we use fish, beef, and lentil. And so it's really, the only thing I can say is one day, hopefully we get back and we can give you samples for free and you can taste it, but they're very delicious. And everyone who really wants to, tastes is want to have more. And if you ever had samosa, and they're from India, if you have ever had those, they have potatoes inside. So they're similar. It's like hot buckets, but they have a delicious sense of beef. And I think, I don't know if I have time to talk about, it's not only beef. So we have onion, garlic, all these veggies in it. That's very healthy.
So they're so good. I'm hungry just thinking about it. And of course you were lucky in that you are a packaged food. And obviously in those early days of the pandemic, everybody was stocking up and running to the grocery store. So that was great news for your existing customers and people who knew about the product. The challenge is, how do you continue to grow as a small business when suddenly you've lost that ability to do sampling? So Matt, what were some of the things that you did?
Yeah, well, not early on, we started as a frozen food company. So e-commerce doesn't work too well with frozen foods, especially with a startup. But when we would do the demos, guests would ask for a salsa to go with it or a sauce to go with it. So I just went to Miriam's sister and said, what kind of sauces do you make? And we were, why didn't we ask you these sooner? They're incredible. And then we figured out a way to make them shelf stable. So we paired the shelf-stable salsa with the sambusa, but we were always primarily a sambusa company. When our demoing shut down, we realized we needed to get these salsas into e-commerce. And one of the fun things was You Betcha Box came to us before we were really set up on any platforms and asked if we would sell with them. They're an e-commerce platform. And we did, and it was one of the things that kept us in business here in the latter half of the year. That and Seasoned Specialty Foods did a box. So a lot of different things. And now we're getting set up on Amazon to do the salsas there. So our sales we did 15% of revenue of sauces early on, and it moved up to 40% here in the latter half of the year. So kind of a swap.
Amazing. I'm curious for each of you, where are you now in comparison to where you might have thought you would be at this point in 2020? If I had asked you, at the beginning of 2020, where's your company going to be a year from now? What would you have said? How different is it? Megan, what about you?
Oh, so it's extremely different. We haven't had core business since March. We're looking to September, hopefully, to be back in business on that side of things. But we feel we're very, very grateful that we were able to quickly find a set of products that we could get to market via e-commerce. And that's something that we are going to continue moving forward. Good lesson learned there. But it's very, very different. What's remained the same is our team, to the best of our ability, and the people that have really invested in parallel and in getting us all through this time. So
yeah. What about Finley's?
Oh, it's so fun. I mean, this conversation is so fun to have right now, just because everybody has a plan until they get a punch in the gut, and then you have to pivot. And I think what's so interesting with what we're doing is we've always strived to want to be really strong locally, but also just really strong and growing slow, and not trying to get out ahead of ourselves or ahead of our skis. And what's happened to us now compared to where I thought we would be, we had every intention to go into pet specialty for 1 to 3 years, build the brand. COVID completely derailed that. And with Chewy and Target support now, we have additional retailers that are reaching out to us to say, okay, yes, we're a major retailer, but yes, we have to help build the brand. And that's something I didn't anticipate, really having those conversations and from 3 to 5 years out. But what's cool about it is it's the opportunity to say and be vulnerable and say, hey, we don't have a huge trade spend budget. What can we do together? Maybe it's not 2,000 stores, maybe it's 50 to start and growing from there. And that, a year ago, I'd been scared to death to have that conversation. And now it's like, hey guys, this is what we think we can do together. How can you help us?
Right. Matt and Miriam, I know for you, you've your network has really been helpful in terms of creating new opportunities. You won an award that got you some capital and some expertise. Can you talk a little bit about that and where you turn? It's really easy hearing you guys all explain now the moves you made. It sounds so smart, but like, how did you get there, right? I mean, who do you turn to when you need that help and advice? Matt, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, Twin Cities actually Minnesota has a really vibrant food business, consumer packaged and food ecosystem. So Grow North, which was founded kind of through the Carlson School of Management, AURI, which is Agricultural Utilization Research Institute. They did all of our nutritional information, and they're amazing at networking. And even the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, they're our regulatory body, but they're incredibly helpful in terms of business as well. And then we applied to the Minnesota Cup, and we ended up winning $25,000 in-kind marketing services through JT Mega, which was huge, because up until this point in our business, we've been mostly focused on operations. Like, how do we get these things on shelves? How do we meet regulatory? And so all of a sudden we win this amount. Then Grow North introduced us to You Betcha Box. And so this network has just been incredible for us. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Megan, who do you turn to? I mean, do you have a network in your industry of people? Were you all talking about what you could do when events were canceled?
Yeah, so really leaned into our team. And then we leaned into our partners that we've had throughout the years. I'm part of a women's organization called Women Presidents Organization, and turned to them to get some feedback. It's a powerful group of women business leaders, and that was really helpful for me as well. And I think just it took us all back to the baseline of being human, and kind of having the purpose of getting through this and doing good, and just coming together in all those ways. So a lot of support, a lot of back and forth with some pretty spectacular people who just showed up for us.
Yeah, that's great. I think human is kind of the word of the year, that's for sure. Miriam, will you talk a little bit about your employees? Because I know they're so essential to the business, and yet how challenging it became in this past year with everybody's personal situations and distancing and all of that.
Yeah, and I think what happened in Hoyo, we always, even before the pandemic, we put people first, because the whole idea, the whole mission is how do we help these women to realize their potential, because they come with no skills, they come with no language skills and job skills from where they come from. And they come to here and they're so afraid interacting, they're so afraid if they will make the wrong move. So we were already doing that, but the pandemic really taught us that, wow, what do you do? Where do you go? As Matt was saying, the demos were the key place for us to really go to different stores. Well, that was out of the question. How do you go to a new store if you are not demoing? And so we kind of focus things that we thought is important to make sure that we put these ladies in the center of the business. So making sure that we know how they're doing, how their kids, because some of these ladies are single mothers and the kids are home, they stay home. And so making sure, I think Matt and I were talking this morning that one of the ladies say, I can't come to work because now I have my children at home. And how do I come to work? And so it was easy for Matt and my sister, who are the key people who work there, to say, bring her on. And so the ladies feel good about, and then we give them a space while the children are there. They do their homework. We give them rides. So we make sure that we take them from their home. And sometimes, as Matt knows, they're not on time. And we don't really make a fuss of it, okay? We say we have to start the sambusa at 8. Sometimes we start at 10. And so all these things are things we kind of let it go and make sure that we are supporting these ladies while they're working for us.
That's great. Kyle, what about you? I mean, you have a similar situation, a lot of part-time employees with special needs. That's kind of the whole mission behind the business. What did you do?
Yeah, so just like Miriam and Matt, really having to think about, what is most important, and that's our people, right? Like if our people aren't happy and if they don't have access to certain things, I mean, what was so interesting with COVID is it shut down that face-to-face physical interaction, but there was also, the teacher in me sees, well, what's the opportunity? And something we weren't doing as a company was, Zoom sales pitches. Okay, great. But guess what? Now that's access for our people with disabilities anywhere in the country to hop on the Zoom with us and share 1 minute of their story, because or share the entire sales pitch. Sometimes they're way better than me at that and have more confidence, which is great. And I think we really had to look at how do we engage our people with our retailers. If we did get a new retailer, what did the education with the managers or the employees look like? And then how do we leverage technology to have our ambassadors do the education? And I think we were really able to navigate that pivot now to the point where we've had two people with disabilities pitch major retailers. And that for us is like, okay, why weren't we thinking of that before? I can go on and on about that, but ultimately we had to learn a lesson, which we did. And now they're thriving in the digital age, just like they can blog, they can write. They may not be physically mobile, but they are just so intelligent and so talented in other areas. We're like, let's leverage that.
Right. That's amazing. That's really great to hear. Megan, what about your team? Has it changed? Did they all know how to pivot with you? Suddenly you're making this gear that you're very different than making exhibition spaces, I would think.
Mm-hmm. So you know what, the team has just been honestly just incredible. As I look out, we're still innovating. We had a big, what we called think tank on Tuesday to talk about, okay, because we are looking for this to take into September, and then we don't know exactly what the trade show landscape is going to look like, or face-to-face in general. So we're continuing to innovate and plan for the fact that we need to keep our e-commerce site alive and well and come up with some new products that are our wheelhouse. But the pivot at the beginning, people just jumped in with 2 feet. it was a matter of, we're going to do what it takes and we're going to do it together. And I mean, we were doing things we had no idea how to do. We were calling on markets we'd never called on. It was a completely different world, and there wasn't one person that wasn't right there in the weeds, just getting it done. So, and I think that holds true kind of across the board for everybody. At least that was our experience. You made a phone call, you needed something. It was, I'll drive over and get it. Or, you know, it really changed the way that people work together. And I think that is a positive.
I think you're so right. I mean, I think we've all been experiencing things that are just so different. Like here we all are zooming in from our homes. Who would have ever thought? And it does bring us all together, no matter what your role is in a certain way. I'm so curious, given the pivots that you've made, do each of you think your business is forever changed? Have you just kind of gotten by until it gets back to normal? Is there anything, does normal exist anymore? Kyle, how do you think about it?
Oh, I think about whatever normal was, even earlier this morning, to what it is today and what it'll be tomorrow. I think we are far more open to embracing challenges and vulnerabilities now than we were a year ago. And to be honest with you, what's really cool about this is we're in a position now, at least in the pet space, dog adoptions are through the roof. I mean, dogs are home at your ankles, so you need to, treat them more. And it's like, we're just going to embrace this wave. I think we're going to really have to focus on being true to the mission throughout all of it, but also knowing, I think about the sell-in process and meeting with new retailers. I don't think that will ever be what it was. I think we're in a position now where small companies that might not have a huge travel budget have access to buyers. They have access to managers. That's one of the coolest things that I'd say. I hope that obviously face-to-face interaction is important. And yes, we want that again. But for some of us that don't have the ability to travel, we're in a much, much better spot now and have access to things we probably wouldn't have had.
Right. What about for Hoya? Forever changed? Do you have a different business plan now than you might have a year ago?
Well, the e-commerce piece for sure. That was something we always had on our radar, but the Sambusa was all consuming. And so that for sure will be a part of our future, and as we grow, we're regional now, but as we grow beyond that, we won't be able to do demos as much anyway. So this was honestly a good, way to initiate some new and different things as we grow. So.
Yeah, I think this COVID taught us a lot, and it really brings a lot of great things from every corner. And so as much as, we were all grieving, oh my God, what do we do? But we kind of survive it by doing innovative things in a way that we never thought we could do it.
Great. Megan, what would you add to that for your company? Are you forever changed by this time? Will there be a getting back to business as usual?
We are forever changed. I think individually we're forever changed. And perhaps the way we prioritize and the things that we are focused on have changed just in general. We are confident that we'll get back to our face-to-face business. And in addition to that, we've added a lot of other avenues and markets, and we're going to continue to innovate in those ways too. So it's been extremely difficult. It was like starting a business from scratch within a pandemic, because that's virtually what we did. But moving forward, I think we'll be stronger, more diversified, and actually have a lot more offerings for our client base as well, based on our learnings.
Right. We have some amazing questions pouring in, so I want to make sure we get to some of those. First up, one of our guests wants to know if any of you utilized a PPP loan. Did any of you apply? Were you, Megan, you're nodding yes, did you? And how helpful was that to where you are today?
Oh, extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. We didn't sit back and wait for the assistance, but without the assistance, things would have, we already were making some very, very difficult decisions. We all had to make a lot of sacrifices. And that would have gone much deeper and cut much more into people being able to wait it out. So that was very, very integral to where we are today.
Kyle, what about Finley's?
Yes, we did. I think because what we learned too was we didn't want to lose the jobs that we had created. So what we had found is there's blogging, there was additional jobs we actually could create or at least pivot our ambassadors into that, you know, they're cash intensive. They deserve the same wage as the rest of us. And that was something where we had to leverage the PPE loan to not only keep that part alive, but actually help people thrive. And we have different ambassadors now that went from blogging to sales. And I think that's what we wouldn't have been able to do it without that.
Right. Matt, Miriam, what about for Hoyo?
Yep, we did the PPP and the disaster relief in April. So yeah, we were pretty worried in April. We thought, you know, cash flow was kind of sinking there. And so we got in April, like it really gave us second life. And then in May, things started picking up again. So.
But it helped you get there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ryan wants to know if any of you use outside photographers, video production teams. Are you getting help with your marketing materials? Megan, I'm guessing you know how to do all of this, but Ryan wants to know if those are relationships that you had. How are you finding new partners right now? I think that's something that a lot of us have found, is that the networking and new relationships are especially challenging. So are those relationships that all of you have had, or how did you seek out what you needed, especially in this unusual time? Kyle, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I can, only because it's so interesting with COVID. You think about what we had to do with photography, videography, anything from a planning standpoint. Our people, our ambassadors with disabilities, are significantly more planning that has to go into what they need. And we had to also focus on who are the photographers that are willing to learn and grow in that space, but also can they handle taking photos with dogs that you know, running around, that are like smile for one treat, and we have to take 1,000 pictures and pray one of them turns out. But with COVID, we really had to navigate the challenge, especially creating content and staying true to the mission. It was a lot of just LinkedIn, reaching out to people, or even Instagram. We're fortunate where, hey, who doesn't want to take pictures of cute dogs to serve a mission? So we've been lucky there, but we say it comes with an asterisk of it's going to require a little extra time and love on your side.
Great. And any others on utilizing those kind of freelance partners and finding them this year? Megan, any thoughts on that, or Matt, Miriam?
You know, I would just say leaning into our networks is how we've done that. So.
Great. Okay. Let's get to another question. Actually, this one is for you, Megan, and then we'll get to one for Hoyo. Amy wants to know, how do you envision the trade show experiential marketing business in the future? Will size matter? How do you make sponsorship and participation worthwhile if it's on a smaller scale? Great question.
Sure. It is. The Center for Exhibit Industry Research just came out with some really good findings that we've all been taking a look at. And at this point, they're really saying that Q3, Q4, things will be in motion and back to business. It's going to be really questionable kind of before then, based on the vaccination rollout and that kind of thing. But that all indications are that people are really anxious to get back to face-to-face marketing. They're missing the personal relationship building. They're missing the personal touch and feel of things. I think that industry is planning for a lot of different kind of structure, more socially distanced in general. We want to make sure that people feel safe. Really providing, we've got COVID kits that we plan to start sending with exhibits that include masks and hand sanitizer and various things. And just, I think that the industry is planning to help educate people how to get there and how to feel good about getting there. I'm really hopeful that businesses are going to have the confidence to see the value there again. And I believe that they will. And the research is saying that that's the case. So.
That's great. That's really encouraging. Gary wants to know if all of you have surveyed your teams. What are their concerns? A year later, how are they all feeling about work, working remote, returning to the office, or in the case of Hoyo, the kitchen? Obviously, Kyle, that's a factor for you too. You're manufacturing. What do you hear from your teams right now? Miriam, do you want to start?
I think Matt should take it because I'm not involved the day to day. Matt, can you answer?
Yeah, well, we're frontline, so we never stopped working in the kitchen. And we're in the kitchen with the ladies for 8 hours, 9 hours. And so we hear everything. So it's a constant survey. So like Miriam said, one of the staff was like, I have to leave my daughter home, their school shut down, or her daycare shut down. I don't know what to do. And we're like, well, just bring her, I mean, it hasn't been the perfect situation, but she's actually an amazing child, and she calls me uncle now. And so we have that. And so, yeah, it's just constant communication.
Yeah. Kyle, what about your team? How's everybody feeling?
It's so, everyone's so anxious to get back. I think with what we were building and what we were doing, we hear it both from the, we talk to the retailers, and then my wife, Angie, really runs that ambassador network. And from the ambassadors to their job coaches, everybody is just looking for something positive to get back to. But yet there's still that apprehension of what is that going to look like? I think about all of our ambassadors need vaccinations, and it's, it takes a lot of time, and it's taking longer than they had expected. And there's a lot of built up with our growth. Naturally, they want to go out and grow with us. They want to be part of that, and they want to be the face of that. And I think there's just a lot of built up excitement, but also wondering how are the retailers. I think about store demos, or like Megan was saying, even trade shows. What is that going to look like? How can we get involved? And the biggest question they all ask is, the day a trade show happens, they all want to be on the plane with us, and they all want to go, and they want to be on the floor, and they want to represent Finley's. It's just a matter of when that day will come. And I think it's okay. What we've said back is we don't know. And I think that's okay. It's just a matter of acknowledging the excitement for the opportunity ahead.
Megan, can you relate to that?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I was going to add to the previous question was another avenue, and certainly we've explored it, is smaller face-to-face kinds of interactions, mobile trailers, shipping containers that you set maybe in a parking lot, or that you bring somewhere. So you can do things on a smaller scale, maybe more regional, or throughout the country with a set of these kinds of things. So that may be something that companies look to do before they feel comfortable going back to the grand trade show. And I think that starts to get us together once again. And so there's a lot of things like that people have spent a lot of time thinking about that are really important and have definitely a lot of viability as well.
That's great. We have so many good questions here. I wish we had all afternoon. I'm going to take one more of the audience questions. Rick wants to know, obviously you've all made really smart, creative decisions, but would your business still be open today if that stimulus money had not come through? How important was it? Matt, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, we were close and worried about it in April. Yeah, I mean, things turned around, but it would have been close. Yeah.
Kyle, what would you say?
Well, I think we're fortunate with the pet industry to always being so resilient. I think from a customer facing standpoint, I don't think we would have had the growth in our customers purchasing at the volume they were purchasing had the stimulus not come through.
Great. Good to know. Megan, would you agree or different for you?
Yes, we would be in business, but it would look very, very different. And it would have been, as hard as it would have been a much more difficult time. And it would have been really, really hard for our team to stay intact.
I bet. One last question for all of you. What, if there is just one key learning that now informs the way you approach business going forward from this just crazy, unexpected, difficult year, what would it be? Miriam, what is it for you?
I think having hope and making sure that we put the staff first, like make sure that the core of the business is not how much money we're making, but it's really how are we helping the people who are working for us.
That's great. Matt?
Yeah, I agree. They've really held our business up with their hard work. And so, prioritizing them has been huge. And then just being willing to transition and pivot when we needed to.
Kyle, what about you? Key learning, insight. I know you've done things in this last year you didn't know, like how to get a truck full of dog treats to Chewy, how to, like things you just didn't know you were going to have to do.
Well, that's the truth, and we're still learning because every retailer has different demands and logistics. But for us, it was just really being true to the why. I think there's a lot of noise out there. There's you can overthink everything, and it's that less is more approach on, is this going to help our people? Because ultimately, that's why the customer is buying our products. That's why they're loyal fans. And really just knowing it's okay to do one thing right in a day versus trying to do 10. And accomplishing one thing is this, if that's your success in the day and that motivates you, just build on those habits and just try not to do too much, because 2020 reminded us it is easy. Everybody's on LinkedIn, everybody's on social media. It is easy to try and do what everybody else is doing and what they think you should do. But if you're focused on your why and your people, that's going to be your guiding light.
Great advice. I like that. True to the why. Megan, how about you? Key learning from this crazy year?
So I would say it just reinforced the fact that value your team, value each and every member of your team. Also a lot about trust your intuition, lead with the best of intentions, and don't be afraid to make a decision. This time really showed us that the best laid plans weren't necessarily happening, and you couldn't count on maybe what was going to happen, next. So make the decision, get behind it, and just keep moving forward.
Even when there's no blueprint. Well, thank you all. It's really amazing what you've done. I hope everybody will read the magazine as well to hear a little more about your stories. We so appreciate you sharing all these insights and knowing you're part of the business community here in the Twin Cities. Thank you all so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks you all. I want to welcome Jared back to join us now from Bremer Bank to give us some additional perspective related to the conversation we just heard. Jared, are you there? Oh, good. Good to see you. What were some of your key, what did you find yourself thinking as you listened to these business owners talk about, continuity and carrying on, the importance of the PPP loans?
So absolutely. Well, first of all, it's just very inspiring to hear successes, right? Because that's not what we hear all the time. We hear the opposite of that so often right now, and the way the media portrays businesses. But we have a ton of fantastic entrepreneurs out there that have made great decisions and have pivoted and turned this year into not only a success, but a learning environment more than anything. I have a lot of perspective on the Paycheck Protection Program. I think that's almost the only thing I've worked on until I got to work on this project right here. So speaking to volumes of how impactful that stimulus was, it was nothing short of just absolutely necessary. I do know that most businesses would have continued to make decisions to pivot and to move forward, but it was definitely a catalyst to keep everything moving forward. To put some numbers or perspective around it, Bremer did over 1.5 billion in PPP lending, helping 177,000 employees get paychecks, and that's a very impactful number when you put it down to those granular numbers of how many people it could have helped. So
yeah, for sure. That's great. Now let's talk a little bit about credit. I know that's another topic on your mind.
Yeah, so a couple of things, and how I kind of want to wrap up is to add some conversation around the business continuity planning, like Ali had alluded to earlier. I just want to give just some basic information around that. I think we all know there is no way to perfectly plan for 2021. There is no checklist that we're all going to create together to show how we're going to thrive. But this really isn't the first time that we've seen economic and consumer changes that have forced us to make different decisions in how we approach the market. It's probably the most aggressive we've ever seen, but it's very comparable. If we all remember back to 2008 after the housing crisis, consumer trends drastically changed. People were spending money differently. People were buying less goods as a trickle-down effect from what was going on then. So my clients that have weathered the past year well have had a focus on continuity planning. They have a strong grasp on their operational efficiencies. They know their runway with cash and capital. And that's proven to be probably the biggest thing is their decisions that they make are based on a somewhat of a formal plan that they have. There's no perfect plan, as we all know. But when establishing those plans, I think it should consist of 3 categories: that capital and cash, credit, and insurance. Insurance is somewhat of a central point in ensuring your business can continue when there's unforeseen events. Now more than ever is probably a great time to get those coverages analyzed and make sure that you have everything and that you're prepared. If history's told us anything, it's that there will be another event that can derail us from our goals. And proper insurance coverage is just going to shift some of those circumstances and make them more controllable. From a capital perspective and cash perspective, as I mentioned earlier, my clients that had the strongest grasp on those operational efficiencies are doing great in navigating with their current decisions. I've had clients describe to me their planning and how it just more than anything greatly alleviated stress because they had somewhat of a plan on how they were approaching the market, and it wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction. Now, I have had a lot of clients that made knee-jerk decisions just based on emotion without calculating any runway for capital. And that obviously just creates harder environments to work in. Obviously, planning isn't going to like magically make capital and cash appear. But ultimately, if there's any point I'm going to make is that it's going to give you some peace of mind in the decisions that you're making. The tough decisions that you have, like reducing inventory or discontinuing a service or even furloughing employees, those decisions are easier made when you have some sort of a plan in place, when you have a formal plan in your mind. Lastly, when you speak to, go ahead, Allie.
No, I was just going to say we've had a couple people have asked this, and it's something that I know we've been tracking with our team at Twin Cities Business as well. There's talk of taxing on the PPP loans that businesses received. What can you tell us anything about that? Any insights? Is that something that businesses should be preparing for, getting socked with a tax bill from the money they got, the stimulus checks?
I think the reason originally when it was written, there was some, hold on one second, I'm having a little technical issue. Can you still see me?
I can see you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Loud and clear.
So I know originally there was some original questions, or there was some concern with there being federal tax consequence with the way the PPP was originally written. It included some of that. In the most recent stimulus that they passed, they tried to alleviate some of that or remove some of that federal tax burden. I am by no means an accountant, so I definitely recommend that you speak to your accountant on what that looks like. Now, I did see in the chat that there is some concern with there being some state tax on that. My understanding to this point is that's not been remedied yet. So there's been legislation discussed and proposed and talked about to alleviate some of that tax burden, but from what I understand, that's not been formally decided yet on what that tax consequence is going to look like.
Well, that's something we'll continue to track and hopefully provide some more insight at tcbmag.com. Final thoughts, Jared, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think finally, just in summary, I feel that every business at all times should have a business continuity plan. And that should include your access to cash and your capital and your credit insurance. To my point earlier, if anything, just relieving stress, creating some transparency within your organization, and just helping you to make better decisions and reacting to what we know is going to be a continually changing environment. I do think it is also worth noting some of the additional resources out there real quick before we wrap up. There is currently Paycheck Protection Program funds available for not only first draw customers. If you've never taken advantage of one the first time, you can still do a first draw. But there's also the second draw currently available. And those funds have not been moving nearly as fast as they did last year because of some of the changes that they made on who can qualify and the limits. The SBA is also has additional funds allocated for the disaster relief loans, the EIDL loans. I think someone had alluded to that earlier, that they had taken advantage of that. And there's also some reduced fees on SBA lending and some subsidy payments that are being made. I think it also came up in the chat that there has been numerous state and local grants available. I'm assuming that's a trend that's going to continue. They're going to continue to pool those grant funds together. So it's important for everyone to keep their eyes open on those. And then, of course, find yourself a great relationship with someone that can help you with some financial advice, because there's just a lot of moving parts going on with the amount of grants and subsidies. But
Right.
again, I want to again thank all the panelists for sharing their stories today. It's inspiring. It's uplifting to hear those successes, and just I want to congratulate them on what they've done. And on behalf of Bremer, again, I just appreciate everyone that's joined and everyone that took part in the event today.
Well, we appreciate all of your insights, Jared. It just sort of reaffirms the importance of having a good banker, financial expert you can trust, because it's a lot to keep track of right now. It's so complicated. So thank you for all the insights. Thank you again to our sponsor, Bremer Bank, for making this event possible. And thank you most of all to all of you for joining us today, for the great questions and for all the support for these small businesses, which are really key to the fabric of our community. This webinar will be available online in the next few days. So if you want to share it with colleagues and friends or watch it again for all the highlights, we encourage you to visit tcbmag.com and do that. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great afternoon, everybody.